started. So today we are talking about the multi-sited. So if you are multi-sited, you have multiple eating sites, this is the training you need to come to. Just a little bit, we kind of talk about this at every training, is if you need anything, who do you contact? Get to know your consultant. Your consultant is the one that does your review. So if you don't know who that is, you can go to page 4 in the training manual. If you don't have a copy of the training manual, it is located in the resource library under Center Manual. You'll go to page 4, and that has a list of all the consultants. It's done by county. We have 3 counties that have multiple consultants. So if that is one of them, then you may have to contact us if you're not aware who that is. You can call your consultant at any time for any questions. That's what they're there for. They can even come out and do technical assistance. That's when they look at all your information and tell you, no, this isn't right. Yes, this is right, without it being a review, but you have to request it. We don't just do technical assistance. We don't have time just to go to every entity that we service. But if you ever need technical assistance, you can always contact us. We are here to help. You can also contact our office. We are still teleworking. We are trying to come back. They're trying to get the whole state department to come back in April. So you can call us. Some people get upset because they're like, well, no one's calling me. You can leave a message. We will call you back. But again, some people are here, some people are not. It depends on the day. It depends on certain circumstances. So, but you can always email cacfp@sde.ok.gov. This is our entire CACFP team. They all have access to it. We've actually had this email address for a while. So I would keep that in mind. And that way, again, all of them look at it. Unless if somebody does need something from you, specifically, of course, send it back to them. But this is a great resource if you have questions or anything else. Email them. Again, it's a team of like 5 or 6 people that have access to this, and they will get that answer to you as quick as possible. So another thing with CACFP is integrity. All of our reviews are done unannounced. We are still having reviews. Some people know schools, USDA has told us we are not allowed to do school reviews this year, but CACFP has not been given that waiver. Trust me, the schools will be making up for it, but we are still having CACFP reviews this year, and right now they will be unannounced. They've always been unannounced. You actually may get a little bit of heads up because some may do it at your center, some may ask for documentation and then do it at home, but they still have to do an observation, so they will have to be there at least at some point. If you are declared seriously deficient, you are required to attend training, and that training is dependent upon what happens at the AR. So, but whatever training you are to attend, you do have to attend it within 60 days of your exit conference. We do offer trainings again every month. We have about 4 trainings we offer every month. We have 1 that we offer every other month. So we offer a slew of training. You just go to the training calendar. When you if you go to the CACFP agreement page where you go in to log into your application, once you log in, it will pull up a training calendar in the left-hand column, and that's where you go. That's where we put all of our trainings. I just updated it yesterday once I could get in there with our June training. So we try to have a couple of months out. So if you need training, we always have training available, and just check it out periodically, because sometimes I do some that are for both schools and for daycare, anything that's food related. We've done that. And if we do any specialty ones, we do try to let you guys know that as well. There will be a meal pattern change, a small one regarding the whole grain. It's about equivalency, whole grain. You count it a little bit different. The serving size is going to increase a little bit with the grain, and we'll be having that later on, probably closer to August, September timeframe. So again, where do you go? So this is the email address, or the web address that you will go to in order to log into your application agreement. This is also where you can find the USDA website here, this rates, the eligibility scale, the training calendar, and this is also where the website that you go to to have access to claims. The resource library is one you do not have to log into. If you don't log in, anybody has access to this. So the resource library, it has our USDA memos, our training manual. We have all of our interactive forms in there. So if you want a form that's in our book, but you want to be able to type into it, we have certain forms that you can do so. It's in this section called worksheets. It's just at the very, very bottom of the resource library. And then we also have our food buying guide and crediting handbook in the resource library. So just a reminder that our fiscal year is from October 1 to September 30th. So that is what we go by here at the state agency. So when we do reviews and all that, we look through October 1st to September 30th. Now the online application and agreement, just make sure, we have seen this issue a lot, and it's really come up with COVID. Anytime you have a change to your application, you have the ability to go in and make those changes. So there's a question on the review about if you are going in and updating your application, and you can get written up if you are not. So make sure any changes that you go in and you select those in your application agreement. If you're changing your times of meal service, if anything is different, that what you're doing, if your email address has changed, if now you're getting your mail someplace else because of COVID, this is what we use. This is the information we go by. So if this information is incorrect, then you're not going to get the information, or just make sure that it's the right people, because sometimes it can be right information in there, but maybe your contact person for Ccfp is not the right person. It's somebody else. That person doesn't check their emails. So make sure that that information is up to date. If you are contracting, we just let people know that if you want to contract for any services, you do have to have a contract with us. It does have to be given to us and approved. And if you even contract for food, again, every year we have to have a contract. If it is for a service, that if you're paying somebody to help you with a service for Ccfp, you have to write a contract, and then we have to approve it before you can go out on bid. So you cannot spend any Ccfp funds unless we have an approved contract. Every year it is required for an institution, not institutions, but you must submit a budget, and this does happen in your application and agreement. The budget part, the financial side of Ccfp is getting larger. We're going to talk about that today. You do submit a budget, it is in your application agreement, but again, things are ever evolving. This is one area. It's always been an issue. It's always been a thing with USDA. It just, because of how we were kind of set up, we didn't focus on it as much, but now the focus is really on the financial side of Ccfp. So I'm going to talk about that today, and some new changes that are coming up for next year as well. We do have a Ccfp application training. We offer it every month. We did not have it this month due to, or we didn't have it Tuesday due to the system being down, because she can't go over how to fill out an application when the application isn't opening up. It is going to be rescheduled for some time this month as well. Again, we do it the first Tuesday of every month. All right, so this is what it looks like. This should look familiar. This is, if you look into the mustardy, yellowy column on the left, you see the apple, and underneath the apple is where you go to, you log in there to do your claim. If you enter your username and password here, will take you into the application side. If you also, you'll see the resource library under that apple. It's at the second to the bottom. And once you log in is where you'll find the training calendar. So again, just a reminder, because we're all learning due to COVID that in order to get credit for this training, you have to go to the training calendar and register. You have until 8 p.m. tonight, because we pull the Zoom account information, and then we pull the information from the training calendar to make sure that's how we will move it forward, that you attended this training. If you don't register in the training calendar, then we can't give credit, because we don't know what facility you belong to, and we don't have the time to go through all 600, 800 centers to see who belongs to who. So this, if you go to the resource library, it looks a little bit different than this now. We did some updates at the very beginning of the year, which were good. It was very bulky, I guess you could say. We had very few headings, so we did add a lot more headings. So I think things are a lot easier to find. So here you can see the center training manual. We added at risk. We have a whole section for multi-sided. We have adult daycare. So everything has been broken up. We think it's easier to find things now, and hopefully we've had a lot of situations where people were looking in the wrong information or pulling up the wrong stuff. And again, this is a big one. A lot of people do not. This is on the business maintenance page. This is where you will find that you attended training, but just again, to make sure that that contact information is up to date. The emails that we send for this training, it does go to the person who is in the contact information for Ccfp. Eventually, we'd like to get it changed that everybody that's registered, you put in your email address, and we can send you an email. But again, our system was not set up to handle COVID. So we're trying to make it inch along to do the best that it can. So again, just make sure that that information is up to date. That's who we always contact. That's the email addresses we use. That is the, it's not the mailing address because there is a section for mailing, but this is the person, the phone numbers that we're going to contact. This is the information that we look at of who we need to contact, either for trainings or maybe your consultant needs to talk to you about something. This is where they will go. Okay, so another section is when you go to the application and agreement. This was a new change for this past year. When you go to your application, if you hit the fiscal year 2021 and you scroll towards the bottom, you will see these uploads. And in the past, you had access to upload documents that we needed. Well, what kind of happened is there's certain things that you couldn't upload because we had to see it first and we have to make the changes. There's certain things you cannot change, like your license information, your DUNS number. We have to do it on our end. So people were uploading stuff under other titles and it was really getting mumble jumbled. So now only the State Department can, us here can upload any form. You can access them, you can see them, but you can't upload them any longer. So again, that's a really good email address that you can email any documents that we might need. Again, if you have someone that emails you directly, says, hey, I need this, send it back to them. But if it's your DUNS or if your license, if you change anything with your license, just send it here and it will get updated into the system. So we're going to talk about, again, we talk about the financial side a lot. Again, this has always been a thing. It's actually USDA's #1 thing. We just kind of wasn't focused on it as much as we should have. But again, we've had a lot of changes into our department since COVID. We have a director over schools and a director over Ccfp, which we didn't have before. So we're really making sure that we are any areas that we were not focused on that we needed to be. We are making sure that we're doing that going forward because we had an ME or a review from USDA this year as well during COVID. So it is required that you must be financially viable, capable, and accountable just to be on our program. So what does that information mean? It means that to be financially viable, that you do not need our funds to operate. Like what the purpose of, people get confused about the purpose. The purpose of our program is for you to be able to serve more nutritious meals to people that may not have access. So it's the whole point is if you don't get reimbursed, it shouldn't be that big of an issue. We are here to provide, we do give reimbursement to the program, but it's so that you can maybe do better quality of food or have stuff that the kids can access. So that's what it means by being financially viable. When we look at certain things, we have to make sure that, again, if there was an interruption, and that's happened this year, we didn't get, we had things out of our control. We couldn't pay claims. And this is not actually the first time that this has happened. So that's why you should be financially viable as an organization. So your organization should be financially viable. We understand that you might be nonprofit and you are not allowed to make a profit, but the whole thing is if there was an interruption of bills, we shouldn't be getting phone calls to ask, why am I not getting my money? Because I can't pay. So the other thing is you must be capable. You must be administratively capable and have adequate staff to be on our program. And then you also must be accountable. And accountable is, and I'll talk about what this is too. And accountable just means that you are accountable for the program, that you're record keeping and keeping all that information. So I kind of talk, this is something that people get a little confused about when we talk about for-profit. When we do a review, we talk about for-profit status and nonprofit status. So when we talk about for-profit status, it means that you're financially viable. The entity does not need our funds again to operate. So we ask for documentation. When we come out to do a review, we'll maybe ask for a profit loss. We may ask for a W-2. We may ask for any of those type of information because we have to see as an organization that you are financially viable. That means your entity does not need our funds. So we kind of sometimes say you're a for-profit status, especially if you're a for-profit daycare. Again, this is regarding to their profit and loss. So this should include any bank or credit card statements of any accounts that you use to make any CACFP related expenses or use to pay for any other allowable CACFP. Anything that you are paying for with CACFP, we have access to look at. It includes all bank and or credit card statements of accounts, again, where CACFP funds are deposited or transferred to. So people don't always realize, they're like, why do I have to show you this information? Because if you are spending CCFP dollars, it's federal funds, or if you are expending or any revenues for CCFP, we have access to look at. Because again, in order to be on our program, you have to be financially viable. If you're not financially viable, we can propose for termination at that time, or not propose, but it depends on where you're at. But we may have to make you SD because it is a finding. You have to be able to be what we call financially viable. And then we talked about accountability. Just so you are aware, if you are SD, or if you're new coming onto the program, we do something that's called a VCA that you are required to fill out before we'll even approve your application. What the VCA is you're viable, you're capable, and accountable. And it's about a 7 to 10 page document. And we ask for certain information that we have to look at before we can let you on the program. So things in there would be bank statements, anything that's used, your cash flow. We also ask to see an organizational chart. The people in your organizational chart should also be in your application and agreement. We also ask for information like, how do you record keep? Where do you keep your records? What do you do? So that is what the VCA is. If you get an independent audit, like if school districts have to be audited every year by an independent audit, if you have an independent audit, so anybody who has to do an independent audit. Independent audits are for any entity that gets over $750,000 in federal dollars. So schools, even if a school does not make over $750,000 in federal dollars, they have to have an independent audit. If you get an independent audit, we can use that information, not just for instead of the VCA, because the independent audit is much more in depth than the VCA is. So again, if you do have to have an independent audit due to receiving over $750,000 in federal funds, and it's not just our funds, if you in general receive over $750,000 in any federal fund, grants, reimbursements, commodities, anything you receive federal funds for, then you will have to have an independent audit to be on and that's required in order to be on the program. So we're going to talk about multi-sided record keeping. So this year, we want to bring it to people's attention that we did. It is state auditors. If we asked you, if we came out to do a review this year, and from what I understand, this is indefinitely, so the same thing will be happening this year. If we do a review, we have to have copies of all your paperwork. The copies can be via scanning. It can be actual paper copies, but per the state auditor, they were actually in our office again this week because state auditors, again, we get audited by a lot of people. State auditors are one of them. They are the ones that have been requesting this paperwork, not us. Normally, we would not be asking for copies of your entire review. And we're talking about everything that we look at. We're talking receipts, enrollment forms. If you have family size and income applications, if we look at it at a review, the state auditor wants us to get a copy of it if you were up for review. So just if you're like, and we get this question of who has to pay, if you have to make copies, if you can't scan it, or if we can't get it scanned, who has to pay for it? And it is the center. It is to the center or the entity's responsibility. It is kind of the cost of doing business. You can claim it, you can charge it off to child nutrition because you are copying it for child nutrition purposes. But again, this is not our role. We're trying to get this rule changed. So I just wanted to FYI on that. If we ask for copies, please don't be surprised. It's really not us that are wanting it. It's the state auditors that are told us that this is something that we have to do. So something that I can't stress enough is all forms must be maintained daily by month at each site or the location approved in your application and agreement. So people will show up and people will be like, oh, I don't have the records here, or maybe they're a week, they haven't been done in a week. Like, they have to be done daily. It's part of it. We can come out at any single time to look at your records, to do a review. That's why we do them unannounced. So again, just make sure that all of your records are up to date. Now, I'm going to talk about the expenditure worksheet. So we require an expenditure worksheet. At the end of the month, it shows us everything that you spent your money with child nutrition. So you tell us all of your expenses that are child nutrition related only. Now, when you have multiple sites, you are to keep an expenditure worksheet per site. When we do a review, we usually do a review that it is done by a percentage. So we have to do 10% of your site. So that means not every site's going to be up for review. So when we do our percentage, that's why this has to be done per site. This is again, your expenditure worksheet that you do at the end of the month, where you put all your food purchases on. And again, you do it by site. This is where you put your administrative and food service labor, any of your food purchases or non-food purchases, or any other miscellaneous expenses that were charged off to child nutrition or Ccfp. So just a reminder, so when you are multi-sided, in general, you cannot charge off more labor than what is improved in your budget online. You also cannot charge off more than what the employees being paid. And my example of this, because this has happened to me at a review, is on the expenditure worksheet, they put that their cook was going to get, they charged off to Ccfp that saying that their cook $1,000 off for the month, which is very reasonable for a cook. That's her full-time job at the center, is just cooking. So it's reasonable to have $1,000 go towards that. Anytime you charge off labor, we have to look at documentation proving this. So bank stubs, check stubs, and I think I have a slide in here, but you can't pay by cash. We can use a ledger that shows like the taxes and everything being taken out, but you can't pay in cash. You have to pay by check. Most of the people do it by check. We have to see the pay stub. But what happened at this entity is they were charging off the $1,000 a month. And when I asked to see the pay stub, they ended up giving me her W-2 for the year. And the lady was only making $1,200 a year. Well, you cannot charge off $1,000 a month when you only make $1,200 a year. You can take the $1,200 and divide it by 12. So she could charge off $100 a month to Ccfp, but you cannot charge off more than what the employee makes. Again, we will validate that by looking at pay stubs. When you are multi-sided, we have what's called administrative labor and we have food service labor. So for food service labor is everything like the teachers that might be helping serve. It is your cook. It's anything that's helping on the food operations. The administrative labor is anything that's mostly dealing with paperwork. So it is required with multi-sided, you cannot charge off more than 15% of your reimbursement. And it's like your annual reimbursement. So, and there is this, we'll talk about it in the budget of where this is at, but we will look at your budget. And at the review, we make sure you're not spending more than 15%. So just a reminder, if you are multi-sided, you cannot charge off more than 15% of your reimbursement towards administrative labor. So when we talk about the nonprofit status, so there's twofold. We talked about your for-profit, you have to be financially viable as a company, as your entity, as your organization to be on our program. You cannot be on our program unless you are financially viable, meaning you're not using our funds to keep your doors open. But when we come out to do a review, we do what's called your nonprofit status. So what that means is you are not, because this is a big issue, you cannot be making money on the government. This is federal dollars, and you cannot make money on the government, meaning you have to spend more on the CACFP program than what we reimburse you. So an example is if we reimburse you an average of $1,000 a month, you need to be spending $1,000 or more on our program. And it can be on food, it can be on labor, it can be on all that information. You're going to have maybe a couple of months where you actually get more in reimbursement than what you spend. And that is common, but we do look at the last 3 months, what we call your 3 months operating. So just a reminder, you are required on our program, if you're going to participate in CCFP, that you have to spend more money than what we give you in reimbursement. And again, it can be on food, it can be on labor, but it's what you're spending on CACFP. If you're like, I can't spend that money, then give them better quality of food. There's ways to spend the money. A lot of it is give good quality of food. Give more food because you don't get in trouble for serving more. You just get in trouble for serving less. Again, we have to validate labor payments and receipts by your bank or credit card statements of accounts used to make any purchase of any CCFP related expenses or used to pay for any of these allowed expenses. So again, just a reminder, we will look at your statements and we will validate that, you went to Sam's on February 21st. We will validate on your credit card statements or your bank statements that went through your Sam's went through on February 21st. So people always like, why do I have to give you that information? You are receiving federal dollars. When you're receiving federal dollars, we have to validate those accounts. We have to validate where our money is going and that it's going for the right reasons. We've just unfortunately had a lot of things that have happened over the years. So it's part of it that we just have to validate everything. So what are some allowable expenditures? So any expenses charged off to child nutrition, to CACFP, to the food program, it must be again listed in the budget section of the online application and it has to be approved by our office. So some examples of that are maybe mileage. You have some monitors that go out. You can charge off mileage, but you have to put that in your budget and we have to approve it. Maybe you're charging off, some people do postage or some people do, but again, we may ask to validate that. We may ask to see, I had a situation, it was just a daycare center. They had travel of $1,000. Well, they're here in Oklahoma City. That's where I'm located. And they're in the middle of the city. So I said, what are you spending $1,000 on a year for travel expenses? And they're not multi-sided. And they're like, oh, we're picking up groceries. And I'm like, you have to show us your mileage log. You can't just give us receipts. You have to have a mileage log. You have to tell us what rate that you're using because you can't go over the federal rate per mile. And you have to keep a mileage log. And so anyway, they said that they didn't do any of that. So I suggested they take it off their budget because if you're not going to keep the information for us to validate it, then take it off. But again, we may ask questions. If you have travel, we have some larger entities that may use travel, like they're going to CACFP conferences nationwide. We may ask for airfare information. We need to see registration information. So even in your application and agreement, we may be asking for things to kind of validate why you're saying you're spending this much money. Anything else that's allowable or items that are used for your entire, if you use anything for your entire center, like paper towels is a common one, you must prorate the cost. So if you use paper towels for your whole center, you have to decide and tell us how much are you using for your center, how much are you using for the food program, and then prorate the cost. There's two ways you can do it. I've had some centers that maybe it's a third, so they may take, say it was $10, and then they would take it and buy a third and charge that off to CACFP. I've had some that every third receipt, like the third time they would buy it, they would put it on for CACFP, but the other 2 months they wouldn't. So those are 2 ways you can do it. But again, only items or services only used for our program can be charged off to the program. If it's not used for our program, it cannot be charged off to CACFP. That is an unallowable expense. So again, it's unallowable if it's not on our program. So what are some things that are not on our program? And these are things that we've seen. We've actually seen alcohol. We've seen services for like massages. You can, so again, it's only on food, labor, or anything else used for CACFP purposes. If you are serving items that don't meet meal pattern requirements, like cookies, donuts, you can't charge it off to CACFP. If you have anything that you're not claiming, for instance, I've had some people, I was at a center, and when I was there, they were short-staffed, so they just decided the cook was gone. They just ordered pizza from Little Caesars, no CN label, they're just having pizza. Well, they're not claiming the meal because it did not meet requirements. So what they did is, if you're not claiming the meal, you can't give the receipt and mark it on your CACFP expenses. Anything that's personal, toilet paper, diapers, anything that is not CACFP, again, cannot be charged off to CACFP. Something else that I was going to say about expenses and revenue. So I just lost my train of thought. I'll try and think of what it was and I'll come back to that. So what are some other requirements or other documents? So we have what's called Building for the Future. Everybody is required, except if you're adult daycare center, to fill this out. You must distribute this to everybody. It lets them know that you are participating. When you are multi-sided, you also have to give us a copy to put into your file. Single-sided don't have to do this, but multi-sided organizations do have to do, and this is what it is Building for the Future. And you do at the box at the bottom is where you put in your information. Again, you have to send us a copy, and it does have to go out to everybody participating in your program. So training, it is required that you do have a designated CACFP trainer. So every year, someone with at your entity has to train. You must, again, conduct these trainings every year. You must document the date, the agenda, the topics that you covered, and any signatures of anybody that attended. You must keep these sign-in sheets. And again, you must complete all your training every year by September 30th. So again, it is required that you guys conduct training at your facility. There are some required topics. These are the topics. You can do this just, you can do them one-on-one, you can do a meeting style, but I will say that civil rights is required for everybody that is helping. Now, some of them, like the record keeping, or maybe the meal, like say CFCFP meal patterns, you may just talk to your cook about that. But when it comes to civil rights, everybody does have to take civil rights. That can't be just a one-on-one. I mean, it can be one-on-one, but some of these may be like just a small group or a couple of people that you're discussing with, but civil rights is for everybody. So just make sure everybody has had their civil rights training for the year. And again, we need all of these topics, all 6 of them, or 7. Is there 7 now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So used to saying 6. Civil rights was added a few years ago. So make sure all 7 topics are covered. Now, just an FYI, I know somebody at your center has to do training, but in case you guys do want additional training, you got like this training here is one that we offer. Again, we do this one every month. You can find all of our trainings in the training calendar that we do. That's where all of our Zoom trainings are. And also if we do any in-person, they will be there. Right now we have no in-person set. We have gotten a green light where we can do in person. I just don't know if we can do them here. And I don't know if anybody is opened up like a tech center that we can go to do a training, but So we will eventually start going back to in-person. I know we'll keep Zoom trainings a thing for us as well, but we will go back eventually to Zoom or to in-person as well. Also, if you're interested in additional training, Team Nutrition has training, they have webinars on the third Thursday of every month. That's another good resource where you can find additional training. Again, Team Nutrition is here, and then the Institute of Child Nutrition. So if you go to bicn.org, they basically will train on any topic that you can think of, and with these trainings, you will get a certificate at the end. So something else I just want to kind of pop up just so you are aware. I don't know who does the menu planning, but if you have a food buying guide or if you use the food buying guide, if you're not aware, the food buying guide, there's one online. There's an interactive one kind of online on the internet, which is great. We did it. We had a food buying guide training. It is on Next Thought or OK Edge. So if you didn't go to that training and would like to know more, it's a 1-hour training. You can go out there. The instructions are located under training and workshops in the resource library. It's called Instructions for OK Edge. It tells you what to search for, but we did a training, and one is we talk about this app. So if you do use the food buying guide book, I just want you to be aware that there is an app, and it is compatible with all iOS and Android devices. So if that's something that you want, just so you're aware that we do have an app, there is now an app available. And we also have a crediting handbook that came out in September. The crediting handbook, it's a great book. It is located in meal pattern requirements in the resource library. It may look a little familiar to you. This is from the hand crediting book. We have some pages like this in our training manual. They're not up to date because we got those out late. We got the new book out before, when we were in the middle of, towards the end of updating the book, so it did not get updated with the new information. But to me, it's the Cliff Notes version of a food buying guide. So it kind of lets you know, can you serve it? Can you not? So like for here, it says beef jerky. This is the meat alternate section. Beef jerky, it says, no, it's not creditable. And it tells you why in the instructions. If you look at bologna, it says it might be creditable. And then again, it tells you what makes it creditable and what makes it not creditable. So it's a really, really good little Cliff Notes version of the food buying guide. I just like to bring it up because it is something that did come out around September timeframe. And then procurement is a big one. I don't know, when you have multi-sided, it seems like the person who's mostly handling the monitoring and all that stuff might be the one doing procurement. Procurement is the purchasing. Who is doing the purchasing? When you're on Ccfp, you are required to do procurement based on USDA guidelines. This is just a flow chart I want you to be aware of. We do talk about procurement in the administrative training. We talk a little bit about it. We do have a whole procurement training that was done statewide for anybody on child nutrition. Actually, anybody in the federal, if you get any federal dollars, have to follow the same procurement guidelines. If you did want that training, I think it was a 2-hour training. Again, it's an OK Edge. You can go out there and get more information about procurement, but just so you are aware, you are to follow procurement processes for USDA if you're getting federal dollars. If you're spending child nutrition dollars, those dollars have to be procured correctly when you're buying stuff. So, and again, a reminder, if you do contract for any food service, again, if it's for food service, we have 2 types of contracts. Basically, one with if you are getting food from a school district or from a career tech, and then we have one for everybody else. Every year we have to get a copy of this food service agreement. So email us or contact us because we need to make sure you get the right contract. And then that way, again, we have to have a copy of that every single year if you do food service, if you do contract for food service. Does anybody here contract for food service? If you could let me know. I won't talk a whole lot more about this if you don't, but I just want you to be aware that if you do win a contract for food, again, a common one is people will contract with a school district, or you may be in a career tech. So you have to use them, or you may just have a vendor. So I'm not really going to talk about the contract for food service, but if you do contract, if you do want to end up catering, okay, so your catering service, I take it they send it to you every day in bulk and then you prepare out of that. Is that correct?
No, they actually cook and plate all of our meals at our site. They just run our kitchen for us.
Okay. So it's not one where it's like it's per, and they're telling you like, here's the green beans, serve a half a cup. Here's your chicken nuggets, serve 5. They're not telling you that. You do everything.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
okay,
Everything
perfect. I
comes
just want
to
to
us.
make sure.
Yeah, everything comes to us plated and ready to go.
Okay, so it is plated and ready to go. Okay. Just, are they making sure that they're giving you this contract delivery receipt?
We haven't started that yet, so we will.
Okay, perfect. So then let me talk about kind of how this works then when you do have somebody else for your food. So when you have somebody else that kind of get your food for you, since it's not with the school, since you're not with the school, it's with the caterer, you will not, the school, if you did with the school, they're responsible for the production records. But what happens is when they send you the meals, and even if they're pre-plated, like even if it has like exactly what they already do it, say it's a covered plate and you just hand the plates out, they are required to give you this form because they have to let you know how much food is on there. And I will let you know if they make anything like say chicken and rice, and it's a recipe that they made, they have to give you a copy of the recipe because when we come out, we need to look at it because being on Ccfp or any of our child nutrition, you're required to serve so much of different types of food. So we have to guarantee that they're serving enough food or they're giving you enough food. And then if you haven't, make sure you get the correct contract from Cassie. If you do go to that cacfp at ste.ok.gov, you let them know that you are, just to make sure you have that contract, because again, we have to have a copy of it and you have the right one that you gave them, because things there that are in there is like, if they're not giving you enough food, then you don't have to pay them for those meals. So I just kind of want you to be aware of that. Something else is when, say they give you 25 meals, you're licensed for 25, and they give you 25 meals, they're going to charge you for 25 meals, but you only had 18 participants that showed that day. You can only claim with us the 18 meals. So what was consumed by your participants is what you can claim, even though they may be billing you for more. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. So it's not with the school. Does that make sense?
It's perfect. Yep.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
So not with the school. So let's go ahead and go on to adding and removing sites. So if you want to add a site, so you're multi-sited and you have say 2 sites and you want to add an additional site, you used to be able to go to the site maintenance page and you could enter information. You no longer can. So if you do need to make any updates to your site maintenance page, you do need to contact our office and we will make those changes for you. And again, you can email them to CACFP and send that, and that way we have the documentation and we can get that changed for you. For any site, so if you do have any site updates, again, make sure you contact us. But for any sites that are not licensed, the license type selected should be none or 0. So just kind of an FYI, I know you can't put that info in there anymore, but if it does not need a license, it does have to say none or 0. So if you're a multi-sited center, any single-sited center or at-risk program with currently that has 1 eating site, but you want to become multi-sited, you actually have to fill out a whole new application. We're wanting to get this changed. A lot of it has to do with the budget aspect. The budget is different for multi-sited as it is for single-sited. We're trying to make it much more seamless hopefully going on for next year. But just to let you know, if you are single-sided, meaning you had 1 eating site or you had 1 facility, but you want to add additional facilities, you do need to fill out a brand new application that will change you from the single-sided to the multi-sided, and get that done. Right now is actually a really good time because it's not during renewal time. So, but I just wanted to make sure that you are aware that you do have to fill out a whole new application, even though you filled one out a few months ago, if you are changing. So when you want to add this site, before a sponsor can add a site, we do have a site form. It is called the new site add form. It's in the section called the multi-sided section. So you have to fill that out. You will also need to give us information regarding a license. Now, if you don't need a license, you do have to contact DHS, and we have a form out there that you can fill out to send to DHS for them to send it back to you. If you are a school district, you are exempt from that requirement. But so we need the new site ad form. We also need a license or documentation stating that that site does not need a license from DHS. If you are a for-profit, if you're a private, nonprofit, and unaffiliated site, then you must have an unaffiliated site agreement. And that is located again in the multi-sided section in the resource library. This is actually, this statement right here is, I believe, number 11. Yeah, it's in number 11 in the application. So if you're like, where did you get this from? That exact wording for private, nonprofit, and affiliate sites is in the application under the sponsor application number 11. So what that means is, if you're a private nonprofit and you go to this church, I go to this church and I want to use that site as an eating site. I'm not affiliated with the church. I am my own, not private nonprofit, but I just want to use this site as an eating site. Since I'm not affiliated with them, then I have to have an agreement. So that's what that is. And then also, when you do want to add a new site, you do have to make sure that everybody that site and the people participating, or that not participating but are helping with the site, are not on our NDL list, and that is our national disqualified list. So you have to go to the website and you have to type in the information they ask you to, and we'll have to have documentation showing that they're not on the list. You do have to be registered, but on page 271 of the training manual, it tells you how to register. And then we will also, if you are at risk, we also need the other information like the area map. We need the low income report information. Only if you're at risk. If you're just a daycare center wanting to add another site, we do not need an area map. We don't need low income report information. We don't need that. That information is only, again, if you are at risk. And at risk, we get that question. If you're not for sure what at risk is a separate program from it's a Ccfp program, but it is not just being at a daycare center. It's for school age kids only in a low poverty area. There's other requirements to being on that. So if you are at risk, we do have to have an area map. And what people sometimes get confused about what that means. So it is required that you send in a map with the location of the eating site. So you have to have a map with the location of the eating site and the school site that is in that area. So what I try to explain to people is if you lived at that eating site, if you lived there, where would those kids be going to school? Because it's not based off the area map, the low income information. It's based on where the eating site is. It's not based on the people that are participating. So you may be at one site, but this one site is in ABC schools. Those kids would go to ABC schools. But the kids that you pick up attend XYZ school. It's not based on where the participants go. It's based on, if you were to live at that site, where would those kids go to school at? So I hope that makes it a little bit. It gets complicated, especially in a urban area like Oklahoma City, where I can be right here and across the street's a school, but if I lived at this site, that's not the school I would attend. I would attend a school 3 blocks away. So if you're in a town, I grew up in a very small town. Say, I'll just throw out, I'm trying to think of a town, say Corn, Oklahoma. Corn is, I don't even know if there's a school in Corn, but there's one school in Corn. You would just get a map of Corn boundary, the school boundary map, and just place where your location site is and pick Corn. We would know that there's one school there. So it's obviously going to be just that one site. It's not as complicated as Oklahoma City or Tulsa. If you do need to get an area map, I will tell you the best thing to do is Oklahoma City Public Schools and Tulsa Public Schools if you go to their website, you can type in your address and it will tell you where your school sites are. That if you type in the address, what school site it is. So that's a great way to go. And again, if you're a small town with one school, just get a school map the school, the district, and then you have to map the location of the eating site and then map of the school district. So, and here's a couple of places that you can go. You can also use Oklahoma Hometown Locator as another one. So that is the area map information. The low income report. So in order to be able to participate in at risk, that school site, which can be elementary, middle, or high school, has to be in an area of 50% less free or reduced, or over, I'm sorry, has to be in a site over 50% free and reduced. So I think what's going to happen is a low income report. This comes out every year. This year, we still haven't heard any word about this. It usually has to be done by October. So I'm assuming this year it wasn't done. So we're going to be using the last year's information again. So always go out to our website. We have our last year's information. So say you want to do your at-risk site in Corn, Oklahoma with the one school eating site. What you'll do is you'll go to the low income report. You'll pull up Corn Public Schools, and you will pull up, you'll make sure at least the elementary, middle, or high school is over 50% free and reduced. And then that's how you can participate in the program. Again, just make sure you use the most current year. Now, once you get approved, so if you get approved, say in the year 2020, which would have been say you got approved last year, 2020, that information is good for 5 years. We don't ask you to look this information up for another 5 years. So just FYI, you do this one time. It's good for 5 years. And then at the 5-year mark, we will make you get us new information for the low income report. So say in 2020, they were over 50% free and reduced. Maybe this year they're under 50% free and reduced. We don't do anything because, again, that documentation you gave us is good for 5 years. And the low income report is located in the resource library. Now, it's not quite as complicated to remove a site, but we do have to have a lot of documentation for anything that really happens. We have to have step-by-step processes. So if you do say you had 10 sites and you want to remove one, we do have a remove site form, and just fill that out and again, send it to us, and we will remove that site from your records. It's just, we like to have the documentation in the backup, because if someone said, well, this was not supposed to be removed, or who removed this site, now we have the documentation as to why. So let's go over the budget part online. So when you log in and you go to your application and agreement, the second thing down is the sponsor application, and that's where you're going to find all this information. So see, you can see right here in number 11 where it says for nonprofit unaffiliated sites, each site must have its own 501c3 submitted. So if you do have an unaffiliated site, we do have to have a copy of their 501c3. As you can see here, these are some common things that we've seen. I'm kind of going to point to them with my arrow, if you can see my arrow. Make sure when we have the number of facilities, you put the number of facilities you have. Schools would get really bad about putting like 8 daycare centers when they really have like 8 sites at their school district. If you participate in the at-risk program only, then you need to put your information in at-risk right here. If you are just a daycare, then you need to make sure you put, again, your total number of facilities. And then in this bottom section in number 9 this is where you list how many children you have total. Don't worry about the tier 1, tier 2. That's for family daycare homes, but you will put how many free kids you have, reduced or not eligible total. So so for instance, this place had 8 daycare centers. So they were multi-sited with 8 daycare centers. And out of those 8 centers, they had 233 free and 0 reduced and 0 not eligible. Now, in number 10, where it says public or private nonprofit, this is where you list all federal funds that you get that are not Ccfp. So if you are a school district and you're getting title funds, if you are just a regular entity and you're getting federal grants, maybe you're getting money for Head Start, any federal dollar amount goes right here. And so this person, if you get contracting, if you're a daycare center and they swipe, those swipes are federal dollars. So you have to put your federal dollar amount that you get, not your reimbursement, because we already have another section that will ask for your reimbursement. what you think you'll get in reimbursement for the year, but this is how much you think or how much you had in your previous year in federal funds. Again, we take this information and your reimbursement amount, and we have, if you go over that $750,000, you're going to have an independent audit to come back on the program. So it's just required per USDA. And I think I may have the citation someplace, but we'll talk about that again. And then also, I think that was the main thing I wanted to talk about. And again, 8, 9, and 10 are the things that we kind of see a lot of issues with when people are filling out the application. So I just want to explain what that is. So this is the budget, and we actually want the budget to look more like this for our single-sided. There's a lot of information on here, I know, but it's better for us to be by line item. What people sometimes forget is we do have to have your entire institution budget. Like you can see here, their salaries are in this situation $337,000, a little bit over that. But how much are they going to use for Ccfp? And here they're telling us that they're going to use 40,000. Now in the last column, that's what we approve. And we only, out of that $40,000, we only approved 12,000. And I'm going to explain why we did that here in a little bit. But again, like right here, you'll see equipment. You will see advertising, insurance, utilities. Again, anything that you list here can be for your entire institution. The second portion is what you spend for Ccfp. So let's say you have postage. And say you spend $500 a year on postage, but maybe 100 of that is for Ccfp. That's what we will need. Now, all these are in blue on this side. When they're on blue, that means you can, and I'll give you an example if you haven't done this, or if maybe you're new. You'll click into this, and then that's where you'll put other information that we will need. And that's actually where we go in to approve it. So if it's blue and underlined, that's where you'll list the information. These boxes are all grayed, so you can't put the information directly in here. You have to click in over here to put in the information. So again, all expenses approved by us will be in the last column. Documentation may be required to approve expenses like any travel, equipment, advertising, training. I have asked for it in the past because I've helped with approving. So don't be surprised if we ask in the office to see documentation. It may just sound a little off. I will tell you, if you put travel in every time, I will ask for travel. Some things, if it just sounds off, or like equipment, it's like, what are you buying? It's just, we need to kind of know what's going on. When you do click in there, again, you can give us more information. So this is an example of the salaries. So when they went to administrative salaries, they clicked on that box, and this is what popped up. So this, if you look here, they have 4 pages worth of employees. I just pulled up the last one, so it wasn't as much. And what you do is you click right here. You can either add item. And when you add an item, that's where you put in the employee's name, their title, what are their wages, their total hours for the sponsor, total Ccfp hours, and then it calculates what the percentage is and puts it over here. And as you can see here, this was not approved. There's nothing in this last column under C and P approved. So what they're saying here is out of the $16,000, they're saying that this person uses 516 of their hours towards Ccfp. And that's around 31%. And so $5,000 of their salary is used on our program. But I will tell you right here, it says food service worker aid. So if it's for food service, it doesn't go in the administrative salaries. It goes in the food service salaries. So that's one error that they did here. So if it is for food service, make sure you don't put it in administration. Administration is solely for those that are working on the paperwork or monitoring, maybe the training aspects. It is not for the everyday operations. For food service, you'll put that under operational. And then when you're done, you just make sure you hit close. What this box right here does, the one with the pencil in it in that first column, is if you want to edit anything. And then the second one is if you want to delete this row. So I just kind of want to give you an idea of how this works. And then to be honest, there's a lot of things that we see. So when you hit add, if you want to add somebody, this is what it pulls up. You put in the employee name, the position, and this is where that information went to that they put in there. And then you can hit calculate. And at the very bottom, once you're done, and then after you hit calculate, you can hit add, and it will add that entry. Again, you could, when you're done, just make sure you close it. And right here at the bottom is whenever this is completely done, and I go into that person where we will go and approve that amount. Now, this is what we do on the application side. When the consultants go out to do a review, this is the information that they pull up to make sure that you're claiming correctly, or they will also at that point, again, the budget is what you're projecting. If you have a person that you just hired and they make $9 an hour, but they could get promoted and make up to $12 an hour, make sure, go ahead and put $12 an hour in there, because what would happen is if they made $9 an hour and then they got promoted, and by the time we come out to do a review, they're making more money, your budget will be off. Because you can't, we can't let you charge off more than what your budget says. So again, your budget is what you're projecting for the year. Now there's going to be a couple of spots that are going to ask for previous year, like I just showed you in the federal reimbursement. It says your previous year total, but a lot of your budget, like this information, is what you're budgeting for this upcoming year. So right here is, again, this is the lower part of the administrative side. You have the training, and you can see again here we have the 337,000 in salaries in that first column. That second column is the 40,000 that they wanted us to approve, and again we only approved that 12,000. Underneath here is where they tell us the projected food cost, food and milk, and then the foods related supplies. And food related supplies are things like maybe forks, knives, cutlery, paper towels, napkins, foil, anything like that is your related. And then right here, again, you'll see your food service labor. This is again where you go to click in. So that person that we saw was in administration, and they really should have been in food service. And then again, it tells you how much they're telling us that they operate, and then how much we approved of the food service. And right here, we didn't approve any. I actually think this person, I used a dummy one. This was kind of a, this person was never approved. So, and this was from like 5 years ago, but I just want to let you know what it looks like. So the reason why we only approved the $12,000 is once you go to Part D, we talk about the 15% administrative rule. Your application will not actually save. It did at this point. It lets you save it even though it went over it. But in the projected administration, again, we have the $40,000. Well, this is the projected reimbursement that they thought they were going to get for the year. 15% of that reimbursement is only $16,000. You cannot have more administrative labor than 15% of your total reimbursement. So right here, no, they are not in compliance. That's why it was only approved for 12,000, is because they cannot have more than 16,000. But again, if you run into this when you're filling it out, it won't let you save. It did at one point a long time ago, but now you'll get a pop-up and it won't let you save it. Because just a reminder, again, you can't have that administrative labor. It can't be more than 15%. And then on your financial viability, we do ask for your total expenses and your total revenue. And we're talking as an organization. Schools, I don't know if I have any schools on here, but schools are really bad about only giving us their child nutrition information, and we need the entire district information. We need your entire expenses for your whole organization. We need your total revenue for your entire organization, because we have to make sure that this is a for-profit. So if this isn't a negative, we cannot approve your application, because you have to be in a for-profit status. And there's going to be some changes, things that we're going to add this year, upcoming year, and I will talk about that. We also have on-site monitoring. On-site monitoring is required when you have multi-sites. The reason why is because if you have one site, you can be there to make sure they're doing things correctly. With not, you have to have what we call an on-site monitoring, and they have to go to each site and monitor 3 times a year. And the most common is 2 unannounced and 1 announced. You can do them all unannounced if you want to, but you are required. There's 2 ways to do it. That one's the most common. But it is required that every facility get at least 3 monitoring reviews. Now, in the application and agreement, in the when you go to sponsoring organization number, the second one that you clicked on where the budget is, this is other information in there. So when you get to the on-site monitoring site part of that application, you have to tell us how many, it will tell you also how many monitors that you need. So here she said that she had 8 sites total. So you have to tell us the county and how many sites that you have in that county, because it depends on how many monitors you have. So this person right here had 3 rural. So she had 3 in Hughes County and 5 in Okfuskee County. I can't talk today. So out of those 8 right here in the manual or in her application, it said with these 8 rural sites, it gave her a full time of 0.133. That's how much time she needs for monitoring that's required to monitor. So this will tell you in your application and agreement. So then once you know this information, then you do have to add the name of the person, and then how many times a week or hours per week are they going to spend monitoring? So this person was going to spend 6 hours a week. So, and that gives, when that person was spending 6 hours, divide that by 40, it was giving her 0.15. So again, you have to make sure you go over that. So it was 0.13. She has to make sure she was at that 0.13 or over. And so she only has 1 person, and that's how many hours a week. You may have 3 people and maybe do 1 hour a week. However you choose to do it is fine, but you are required to monitor, and you have to have so many monitors, and we will look in all this information to make sure everything kind of matches. So again, the 2 methods are if you can conduct 1 unannounced and 2 1 announced and 2 unannounced. The other way is called review averaging, but it's still 3 times per year. If you are interested in what more about the review averaging, you can go to page 286 of the manual. The blue boxes on here are the pages in the manual that you can go to regarding that information. It will give you more information about it. If you are going to add a site, just a reminder that you have to have a new facility must be monitored before you can operate. So claims, we just want to make sure that you know that with claims, you have up to 60 days to submit a claim. You do need to print off your payment notice. So when you go to your claims, once you submit it, you certify it, it will come to us. Then once you get paid, if you go back into that claim and you scroll down at the bottom on the claim summary page, it will have payment notice, print payment notice. Once that popped up, that means we paid you. So make sure you go and print that out. For a couple of reasons. We need it for us, but I've actually been into a situation when I was doing reviews that I went out and did a review, and when we do a review, we have to do on the last month claimed. Well, at the time this wasn't in there, but if you don't, what can happen is the information was in the claim. So I used that review to claim on. Well, come to find out, it never got certified. And because it never got certified, they never got paid for it. So it's just kind of that tool to make sure that whoever certified it did certify it, and that way it went through for payment. Because it was one person who put the information in the claim, and it was somebody else who had to go certify it, which maybe it's very common for multi-sided. So we just have to make sure. So that's why we say go and print that payment notice out, because maybe after a month or 2, this person's like, the payment notice is not in here. Then they can contact the person who was supposed to certify it to ensure that they did and that you get paid. If you do need to make a revision to your claim, which is common, it happens, you do have to fill out the Ccfp claim revision form and send it to us. It's just a justification of why. If you're multi-sided, maybe you put site A and site B, you got them mixed up. you claimed on each other's. Maybe you had snack and supper and you put your supper on snack and snack on supper. It's okay. We understand that this happens, but you do have to fill out, you have to justify why you need to revise your claim. So here are some upcoming requirements. So something that's going to be new for the next year, before you can come on the program, it's a requirement for schools. It's now a requirement for CACFP. You must have training before we will approve your application. So any training that you do from August 2021 forward will go for your training for that. So if you come to training in August of 2021, that will go towards your training for fiscal year 2022, which will be September, or technically October 21 to September 22. Once you come to any of the trainings in August, that will go towards your renewal application. Any training you do now will not go towards that requirement, because what happens is in September, and we'll push it to October, is anything new that we've discussed, we talk about in September, but we'll also do it in August. But you have to attend training before we will approve your application and agreement online. So you cannot participate in the program until someone has come to training. And again, I think we're going to try and do some in-person training this summer on our school side. So we'd like to do both, but we will make it very accessible. We will do things online, and we'll probably try to do things in person as well. So something else that's been a requirement, it's kind of always been a requirement if you're multi-sided, is there are policies and procedures that you have to send to us. And we have not been asking for this for our daycare side. We asked for it on our family daycare side. But these are your policies and procedures. Now, we are going to, and we do have, if you go out there right now to our family daycare home section, it's our FDMCH section. We do have some, and we're going to be putting some out there, some examples, but these are your policies and your procedures for your entity. But we do have to have job descriptions. So for anybody that is getting paid for CACFP, we have to have job descriptions. And it doesn't have to be like Sue Smith, director. It can just be director and then their job description. We have to have your appeal procedures. So if one of your sites wants to appeal, what are your procedures? We have to have your seriously deficient procedures. So if you have one site under yours, what are your procedures when they're seriously deficient? We have to have your sponsoring organization policies, and you may already have those. You may have a binder someplace that has your organization policies, and then we have to have any site policies. So I just want to let you know, we have been requiring this. I mean, I've been on staff 13 years from our family daycare home side, and they're all multi-sided, but we've never asked for it for CACFP. And I'm surprised I think we actually got wrote up on this on our last ME. So just FYI, for next year, we're going to be asking for this documentation. You don't have to do this every year. You only have to do it once. If anything changes, then that's the only time you have to send it to us, or any changes. But I just want you to be aware of what we will be needing for next year. We will be uploading these in your application and agreement, in that part that said that we upload only. That's where we will store it. Financials. So at the end, we will be asking for an end of the year report. It has to go along with your budget. It has to go along with the VCA of things that we have to have for USDA. But we think if we get a year-end report, it will meet our requirements for USDA. And then also, we've always done this for schools and other entities, but independent audit for any entity. We were only doing it for nonprofits, but not for-profits, but we weren't doing it correctly. The wording in the reg is kind of different, so we had to ask for additional guidance from USDA. But if any entity, regardless if you're private or non-private, if you're public or non-public, if you're nonprofit, for-profit, it doesn't matter. If you get more than $750,000 in federal funds, and that's all federal funds that you can get, then you have to have an independent audit before we'll approve before we can approve your application. It's the same with schools. We cannot approve a school application on our school side until we get a copy of that audit. So I wanted to make you aware of that as well. We do keep all of our documents, our institution originals and our multi-sided originals. These are the pages that they're on. And just a reminder, we've had some issues with this year. We talk about it, but I guess people haven't been doing it. But so you need to use our forms. Our forms are approved by USDA, essentially. They have all the information that's required. But if you want to change anything on the form or have your own form, you have to make sure you get it approved by your consultant first, because there are certain things that we have to have by USDA. And if they're not on there, then we won't approve it. I had one daycare, it was actually a national daycare. They had some forms that they've used in other states and we wouldn't approve them in our state because it did not have all the required documentation, which I'm surprised other states allowed it, because again, USDA has certain requirements that have to be on the forms. And if they're not on the forms, and you can use anything that you might have that may be bigger and better. But again, just make sure you get it approved by your consultant if it's not our form, because again, our forms are approved and our forms have all the information that is needed on them. So just FYI, because again, I've been hearing mumblings from our consultants lately. They've been at a lot of our school districts too. It's the same for both schools and for, there's just certain requirements that we have to have. So I appreciate you guys for coming today. If you look at your username and it as a phone number, if you can send it to me directly. You don't have to send it to everybody. Just let us know your email address, because when you call in by phone, it doesn't give us an email address, and that, well, I guess actually, never mind. We don't actually need that, but we do need your name. We need your name and your center, because we do have to know when we go to look at the resource library. I'm getting confused between our school and daycare. So if you see a phone number, please put your name in the chat and put your center name if you can as well, because we need your name to go along with our training manual. So we don't give CECPD credit for the class. Again, we don't send out certificates, but if you met all the requirements, we will, because your name is in the training calendar, we will take the Zoom information, and then you will see that you popped up in the business maintenance page. It will say that someone attended this training. Again, we've had to make our system do some things because of COVID. Eventually, we would like it to where it will put the person's name that sent. We will know who it is. On our end, it just doesn't show it on your end, but we'd even like to take it a step further. And if you click on that name, it would print you out a certificate. But we are just making our poor little system, we're making it do tricks that it couldn't do before. So again, thank you guys so much for coming today. I'm going to stay on for a little bit if you have any questions. Again, check out any other trainings on the training calendar. I'll put some music on. You can send me messages directly. You guys have a fabulous day and have a great weekend and enjoy this lot better weather than we had a couple weeks ago. Have a good one.